You won't tell him, I won't tell him, and I will stay in one piece, you got it?
One Piece made the best Little Mermaid remake. If you don't believe me, let me convince you. But first I would like to explain why the live-action remake did not live up to expectations. I watched the new Little Mermaid movie and to be honest it was not as bad as every YouTube thumbnail would make you think. I can see that children would enjoy watching this. It has a simple story plot and fun music. It was just that all of us are expecting it to be a remake that would breathe new life into the beloved old animated movie. We were hoping that there would be some new ideas that would give us answers to the core problem of the Little Mermaid, just like how they resolved the issues in the Cinderella movie. They tried expanding the lore of the story, but they missed the core issue of the story by a bit. In Cinderella, the core problem is why does she endure the abuse of her stepmother? In the live-action remake, they resolved it by giving her the backstory of her mother telling her to have courage and be kind. In the remake we see her have the courage to be kind even when times are hard. And to have the courage to accept that there are also limits to being kind. It was the love of her parents that tied her down to their house, but it was also their love that set her free. This simple change resolves the core issue of Cinderella being a damsel in distress needing to be saved from her evil stepmother. Her being in love with the prince was only secondary. Having a good rewrite of the prince's backstory was just the icing on the cake that made the movie even better. However, in the Little Mermaid remake, the love story took center stage. I understand why they would do that since one of the major problems of the Little Mermaid is her falling in love with the prince in such a short time. They tried to resolve this problem by giving more time to build up the romance between the two. That did make the story a bit more cohesive. But still, it did not resolve the core problem of the Little Mermaid. Do you know what the core problem of the Little Mermaid story is? Mermaids are racist.
What?
Okay, hear me out. I know it will be a bit of a controversial take, but let me explain. Across all iterations of The Little Mermaid, including both old and new, you will see that mermaids are directly opposed in Ariel delving into the human world. In the original version of Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, mermaids can live up to 300 years while humans can only live a maximum of 100 years. In the Disney adaptations, they subtly implied that life under the sea was even better than living above the land. That's what the whole song was about. There is just too great of a racial gap between humans and mermaid. Could you ever imagine Fiona without any curse, just being a beautiful princess living a grand royal life then having love at first sight with Shrek? That is how absurd the story of Ariel falling in love with a random human is from the perspective of the mermaids. Just to be clear, mermaids are not antagonistically racist. There is just a fundamental divide separating humans and merfolks. Well, not all of them are antagonistically racist except some. As a quick summary, we can point out three major problems with the mermaid story. First, the racial issue of mermaids and humans. Second, the age of the Little Mermaid when she fell in love. And lastly, Ariel falls in love with the prince in such a short time. In Disney's defense, it is really hard to resolve these issues as they are what makes the Little Mermaid the Little Mermaid. Changing the core of the story haphazardly would destroy the whole narrative and would probably lead to an epic failure. In that case, I kind of understand why the remake didn't take the risk and just stick to the standard narrative. But what if I tell you there was someone crazy enough to rewrite The Little Mermaid and resolve all the core problems of the story? Someone crazy enough to criticize flaws of Disney's story and get away with it as barely anyone notice it. The man, the myth, the legend, Eiichiro Oda, the author of One Piece. For anyone who is not familiar with One Piece, it is the best-selling manga/comics of all time and arguably one of the best literature of our era. One Piece is a long-running series of manga that is adapted into an anime. In its long run as a series, it delved into several topics, reconstructing and rewriting several literary works it took inspiration with. Basically, the story of One Piece follows a crew of pirates known as Straw Hats as they sail the vast oceans. They travel from island to island in search of a legendary treasure, One Piece. In one of the major arcs of the story, they visit the Mermaids Island where the merfolks reside. Merfolks are mermaids, but they have varying configurations, not just having a human body from head to waist and a fish tail for legs. They can grow 2 legs when they turn adults. They share the same blood types as humans and can procreate with humans. They are just humans that have adapted to living underwater and share characteristics of fish. Merfolks are diverse in their physical appearance, which is the reason they don't discriminate by race. However, humans look down on them, seeing them as an inferior race. They treat merfolks as slaves. But from the opposite point of view of some merfolks, they are much superior since they can live both above and under the sea, and they also have stronger physiques. This created a divide between merfolks and humans that lasted for centuries. Note, the lore is much more complicated, but forgive me for simplifying the details for the sake of this video. Now that you know the important details about merfolks, let me explain how Gota remade the story of the Little Mermaid. First and foremost, to emphasize that this is not the story of the Little Mermaid, Oda turns the princess into a giant mermaid. Yes, she's a giant mermaid. It's normal for merfolks to be born like this due to their race's diversity. There is no need to further explain. The story starts as the Queen of Merfolks advocates the cohabitation of humans and merfolks. The Mermaid Queen has the noble belief that no race is superior or inferior. She believes that in order to achieve peace between humans and merfolks, someone just has to step up and mediate for both sides to settle and understand their differences. The Queen advocates for change because she wants merfolks and especially her beloved children to be free of discrimination and also be able to live above the surface. Unfortunately, when she was about to convince the vast majority of merfolks to start diplomacy, she was assassinated by humans. In her dying breath, the Queen requested to the king, the princes, and the princess, her family, that instead of looking for revenge, they continue working toward the cause and advocate for peace. The king, even with a heavy heart, did not seek revenge on humans to honor the Queen's dying wish. However, the mission to advocate for peace with humans was discontinued. To make matters worse, while the royal family was mourning the death of the Queen, a creepy merman fell in love with the mermaid princess. A full-grown adult fell in love at first sight with the child mermaid princess. Do you see how weird it is when it happened the other way around? This merman insists on marrying the princess and put a curse on her. This curse would send missiles to the princess at random intervals as long as they are not married. I know, crazy, right? It does not make sense. And 10 years passed as the mermaid princess was imprisoned in the fortress in order to protect her from the curse. But one fated day, a human pirate visited her fortress. Not a prince, a pirate. The Straw Hat Pirates. This pirate takes pity on the princess being imprisoned for a very long time. He offers her that he can protect her from missiles while they explore outside the fortress. The mermaid princess accepts the offer and went out for the first time in 10 years. Yet instead of going somewhere exciting, she wishes to visit her queen's mother's grave, for which she was not even able to attend the funeral due to her curse. However, the royal palace mistakenly assumed that the pirate was kidnapping the princess. While the palace was in a panic to search for the princess, amidst the confusion, the rebels of the Mermaid Kingdom storm into the palace. This rebel includes this creepy guy. The thing is, these rebels have been planning to overthrow the current sovereignty for a long time since they are not satisfied with how they rule. From their perspective, mermaids should have been ruling over humans, for they are inferior in strength and abilities. It was then revealed that it was not the humans who killed the queen but the rebels, as they hoped killing the queen would have brought more discord among humans and merfolks. But in an even more remarkable twist, the mermaid princess reveals that she knows all along that merfolks killed her mother. 10 lonely years spent in the fortress, all alone, yet she kept this secret to herself. Must be devastating. It might appear that she did something stupid. Why did she keep this information and cause more dispute between the two races? Well, aside from the promise she made with her mother not to seek revenge, the princess hopes to stop the never-ending cycle of hate. Hate breeds more hate. She knows revealing the truth might resolve short-term issues, but in the long run, it might just cause greater implications. The princess understands that the truth would only lead to more distrust, and at worst it could also create a divide between merfolks, which would further halt all efforts to bring peace. As the onset of the civil war begins, the mermaid princess was left without any choice but to fight back the rebels in order to retake the castle. With the help of her newfound friends, the Straw Hat Pirates, she battles her way back to the palace. It was the humans they have detested that were now helping the merfolks liberate their people. After a grand battle, the rebels have been mostly defeated. However, in their last-ditch effort, they sent a colossal missile to decimate the whole Mermaid Kingdom. A colossal ship, almost as big as the island itself. The pirate tried his best to stop the missile by brute force punching the ship to destruction. However, the princess, sensing that the pirate's effort might have been overexerting himself to the point of death, cried out for him to stop. In her desperate plea to stop the pirates' ultimate sacrifice, she awakened the hidden power of mermaids. Her power was to call and communicate with the ancient powers of the Sea Kings. They are the titans of the sea, feared and revered by both humans and merfolks. With the combined force of the princess and pirates, they were able to stop the rebellion force. They bridged the gap between humans and mermaids. The mermaids initiated the peace negotiations once again. With the future looking bright, the mermaid and the pirates said their farewells and promised that the next time they meet they will explore the human islands. Just a couple of friends saying goodbyes. And with their farewells, the story of the giant mermaid came to a close. Did you notice that One Piece resolved the 3 core issue of the Little Mermaid and even goes beyond that? First, they discussed the racial issue, a very heavy topic, but they handled it artistically. The second is about the age issue of the princess. It was openly criticized in the story, as shown on the creepy merfolk who fell in love with the child. The third issue, the princess falling in love, was not present in One Piece, as the most logical conclusion for the 2 main protagonists is them becoming friends. And then they've shown that the princess was not a damsel in distress that is only waiting to be saved. She has a strong heart, that desire for peace, and together with the ancient power of the mermaids, the characteristics of a strong protagonist was shown beautifully in her character. The story of One Piece Mermaid Princess was far from perfect, but it actually told a story. I understand that One Piece, being a serialized form of entertainment, has the advantage to flesh out more of its storyline, contrary to a movie where they can only compress all the narrative in the short span of 2 hours at most. But my point is that One Piece understands the story better, and instead of blindly retelling the story by avoiding the sensitive parts, they reconstruct the whole story to the point that it was almost unrecognizable. Yet with its fault and imperfection, I would rather rewatch One Piece Mermaid Island arc than watch an empty remake of a movie. I would have wanted to end the video about now, but there is something that I would like to point out first. What if I tell you the remake was good, or was supposed to be? What if I tell you that there were actual signs that the Disney remake was supposed to be a darker take on the story? That there are plot lines that were hinted at in the story but were abandoned? Let me explain. Plot 1. In the movie it was said that the queen was killed by humans. Plot 2. There was a problem with the Prince Kingdom's seaport, hinting that there were problems sailing the sea. Both of these 2 plots can cause disputes between the 2 races, humans versus mermaids. However, they were just glossed over and were not explained further. My theory is that there was supposed to be a major conflict between humans and mermaids because of these 2 subplots. Then at the climax of the movie, it will be revealed that Ursula was the one planting the seeds of dispute. Ursula is the one who created the storms in the sea, causing problems in the human seaport, and also Ursula was the one who killed the Mermaid Queen. I don't have any evidence to back my theories, but what if the backlash of the racial casting of the mermaid was the cause of why these storylines were abandoned? I guess mainstream audiences are not yet ready to delve into heavy topics such as racial issues. Remember, hate breeds more hate. So let's advocate for peace, and hopefully, a day will come when we can talk about sensitive issues such as racism without hate in our hearts. Thank you for watching. I have used AI voice to dub this video. I'm a bit shy about my voice and thought this would be better. Anyway, please tell me your opinion about this video. Was my theory any good? Again, thank you my friend, have a great day.